Hey Luke, I'm excited for our first episode of the Power series, and this one's all about it's more than just tech, which if those that had heard the intro and the introduction to this series will realise that we want to really dig into, actually it's not just throwing in more and more and more technology. Yeah. Leadership has changed, the way we communicate has changed, the snippets of technology we need and now want and expect has changed. And I think we're going to dive into some of those topics. I guess for those that perhaps didn't watch the intro though, I'm Nikki Hoyland. I'm the CEO of a work technology company called Hula. And Hula is a digital launchpad out to any platform that you use either inside of work or anything inside of your personal life. How about yourself, Luke?
Well, I'm Luke Hall, Managing Director of PTI Worldwide. We specialise in leadership and management development and have been partnering with yourselves for about 12 months now. But yeah, the Power series is something that you and I are both extremely passionate about. In fact, beyond just us, we've got a team of people that are really excited about this. So we've all been looking forward to today. I can't wait to get stuck into it. I believe this one is tech-led.
Yeah.
And then we will delve into how that features in the leadership part. But that's the bit. There's almost no structure, but there's a bit of structure, and that's how we want this to be, don't we?
Absolutely. I think there's been so much as well over the past, what are we now, 18 months of change that we've all gone through. And I think that is the change almost. And we're seeing now particularly people in that, we'll be going back to physical spaces. Is that an amount of days a week? Is that specific to different teams? I think, as we've talked about, it's really important to remember that not all roles can work that way. Yeah. And there isn't this one size fits all that I arguably think everybody's really, really trying to cling to and find, that I just don't think really is the reality. And probably some of the topics we'll discuss in this series around, change and authenticity and enablement through tech are probably the real areas that you need to focus on rather than just this one golden ticket that's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, we chose the title for a reason. It's not just about the tech. And I think in that sense, there has been a lot of change. There's been a requirement for businesses to accelerate their technology, whether that be through allowing their people to collaborate, whether it's allowing them to connect with their customers, going online so they can sell whatever it may well be. There has been a massive surge. Yeah. Your business knows that. It's been a busier year than ever. I've been asked a few times over the past 12 to 18 months, what differences are there in leadership? And I think this is where you and I have been, even just before this, we started recording this episode, there's no right or wrong answer. There has been changes naturally. I think there's the main changes being to the environment and that creating a digital barrier, if we want to call it that. And I know that you'll have views on there shouldn't be digital barriers, but I think from a leadership perspective, there's a lot of things that you can look back on. And it's not necessarily taking a step back, but you can look at principles that have been in place for many, many years that still apply. And that's my answer when people say what has changed. Yes, huge amounts have changed. But actually some of the best things and some of the things that we at PTI, but also I'll be sharing on the Power series, they won't be new state-of-the-art leadership and management ways of thinking. They'll be good, solid core practices that have been here for a long time. Now, you and I, we want to make it applicable to the now.
Yeah, of course.
And actually, one of the things that excites me most about this particular series and the conversations that we will have is I'm going to be learning from you as to how you bottle up that great leadership and management stuff, but then do it through the advancements of technology.
And I think over the past many months, we've seen a lot of people jump immediately to tech, which I appreciate the role that I do, and being a work tech business, it's ironic to say it's not just about the technology.
It's brave of you to be able to say that. I think that's the honest point, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, but we have seen people go immediately to, well, let's put more of and more of and more of tech in, which if you add to that people do want to be able to pick and choose their own preferences, they do want to be able to move as technology evolves, they need this one place for everything to come together in one consistent user experience. There isn't one size fits all. That's so important to us at Hulu, and clearly is the whole concept behind what we do is putting that person back at the heart of technology. But I think for me, technology is an enabler, because if we look at the key areas of focus around communication, and clearly leadership styles come into that, and everybody communicates differently inside their teams. If we look at culture, and there's a lot, isn't there, around culture isn't just a building anymore, and culture has to come and pour out through our teams, and how is that led top down, but also happens quite organically in our teams. The purpose of the business, and is everybody aligned around what we're here to deliver, and is that communicated, and are some of those clear goals and I guess real tangible outcomes for us, available for everybody to understand what everybody's part within the team is. And then I think trust and process is hugely important, which has to come from authentic leadership. We have to have processes in place that enable people to work flexibly, because as we'll talk about, it's not just necessarily where, it also is how and when. But there's a whole lot in there that I'm really interested from your standpoint of how the leaders had to embrace a lot of those things and perhaps adapt or change some of their leadership style, perhaps.
I think sometimes it's a perception. The best example I can give of that is actually how fortunate we've been to use the Hula tool within PCI, and myself and some of the other senior leaders in the business felt going into it like it was there and it was going to fix, and we kind of rushed to get it in. And I think that was the first lesson, is although you and your team have done everything that you could, our perception in terms of planning, and I think this is about, there's a lot of this going on at the moment. A lot of businesses are trying to work out whether they call it hybrid ways of working, flexible ways of working, whatever title you want to give it.
Well, it's all work, right?
It's all work. It's working, and it's different places, and it's different people, and different preferences, and different choices, and all of these different things. And we're talking to a lot of people at the moment. The biggest conversation is about how do we get the leaders and managers to really create engagement around this. So going back to my point around bringing in the Hula tool, the bit that was missing in the early part that you and I have discussed at length, and it was interesting for us, was, well, we just thought that it would do all of these things, which it can, without having to do very much to put in. And that was our biggest lesson at the time. It wasn't naivety, it was excitement. It was determination to be able to go, right, we've got this tool, and it's going to really, really help us collaborate and connect and share and all of these different things. Let's just get it in, let's get it in. And what came with that was probably we set ourselves up to fail a little bit. Not deliberately. The intention was good. The intention was positive. Yeah. We listened to all of the things. You'd taken us through all of the briefings. But I think some of it was we were listening, but not potentially listening on empty, because we were already thinking about what the output would be. So to my point, the planning is key. Today, I want to talk about the plan, do, review model. Really, really simple model that we love. And actually, we got straight into the doing with that piece of technology. So if we talk about the tech not being the only one, because in terms of the way we'd approached it, we perhaps hadn't engaged with our colleagues and said, what do you want it to do for you?
Yeah.
We sort of said, these are the things that it can do. This is what people will love it for. Think about all of these different things. We had a couple of people have those conversations with us, as opposed to, let's go and ask our colleague what they need.
Yeah.
Let's go and ask them what is missing. So before we even get to the implementation, our planning process has been inclusive. And I think at the moment that's the first step, is whatever version of working, as you call it, Nikki, you're going to try and create, the planning part has to be absolutely thorough and inclusive. Does that make sense?
I think that taps into the constant communication, doesn't it? An iteration of communication mediums, but also methods,
Yeah.
and adapting leadership styles for the
Yeah.
different teams that you may have, or different individuals,
Yeah.
perhaps even within that team. I think some of that ties into, it's not just around go live either with technology. After that point, it's that consistent, why are we going to do something? What's the challenge that we're trying to solve? And from a Hula perspective, that's a lot of sites and systems that you use both in work, but then also I'm gonna pick up a personal device because I am more than just the work that I do. So why wouldn't you allow me to bring that all in one space for me to get out to everything that I need?
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you something there? So thinking about us, what do you think are the questions that you would want to be asking colleagues? So before let's say we have gone into the business, we do training needs analysis, we do diagnostics for our programs, we do all these different things. But when we set out to implement Hula, what would be the great questions that we should be asking before we were even telling people that we might be thinking about getting Hula? Sort of draw out of people, what is it that they need?
Yeah, I think how do people find their information? How do they get back to it quickly and concisely?
Yeah.
How do they need information to be shared with them in their working day, rather than that be disruptive?
Yeah.
How do they best communicate and collaborate with teams that might not be in the same space or even the same working patterns? And to try to design for that empty chair, which is something that I talk about a lot of. There isn't this one size fits all approach to either leadership or technology in this instance. So actually, if we almost try to move the chair, as it were, to go, actually, what does each team member need? And how do we ultimately put people back at the heart of this process? How do we put human beings back in the heart of this technology and this experience that we offer? Because we're talking about, this people-first approach to both technology, but also leadership styles.
What's interesting there is, if you think about the plan, do, review model, one of the things that I would talk about is, okay, so as a leader and a manager, how are you engaging your teams individually and collectively when it comes to rolling out, say for instance, a new piece of technology, or going back to that other point around this new flexible or hybrid way of working that people are trying so hard to do right now and get it right.
Yeah.
You're actually saying that some of the questions that you may encourage people to ask when it's this is what the plan, this is what we're going to go with, this is what the business has decided on. Now, how does that work for you? You're saying way before that, ask all of those questions. Potentially ask them again, come back and go,
absolutely.
Okay, so
constant review, right? Like you've talked about.
Constant review, exactly. Is when you get into that implementation piece and go into those one-to-ones, the questions already have depth, because this is what we discussed, this is where we are. How is that in relation to what we did discuss? How far off is it? What do we need to change and adjust? So really getting in the planning is almost a mirror image of the doing, but you just do it one step further down the line and then repeat it again.
Yeah, I think always pulling back to, you said, we did, is so important with any rollout, right? And I think if we can enable that constant flow of communication, both from leadership as to actually this is what works for me as a leader, this is what works for the team, this is what works for individuals, but we almost have to agree I guess in a way, our own SLAs as a team, as to, because we've talked about it's not just where, it also might be when. In terms of flexibility, and it also might be how, which we'll come on to talk about more. But we have to agree those SLAs of, well, actually, this is as a team when we come together, and this is where we collaborate together, and this is, I don't know, a shared team meeting or a meeting with a client, let's say. But these are the times where we work away and on our own, and this is then when we come back in this centralized place. And I think to constantly come back to that do and review is so important around, is this solving the problem that you have? Because I think a lot of times we try to solve a challenge that perhaps isn't there.
Yeah, and it's interesting in terms of this is the challenge, but this is reality. So it's change, it's whatever you want to label it as, but ultimately it's something different. It's something that everybody's trying to move with and keep up with. I think in terms of when you're getting into the conversations, it's about I think flipping the language is always an easy thing to do. It's not about being positive, but actually, okay, well, let's seek out the opportunity. We all want, we all want to be successful. We want to, come to work every single day and enjoy what we do. And we all want to enjoy one another, something that people have missed. To that end, I think that instead of fearing the conversation or going into what you may expect to be a little bit of a battle, it's about making it something that is going to happen, so let's do it the best version of it for ourselves. I think there's always start with the individual, but I completely agree with you. Getting people back together and doing it as a team, trying to create that 100% majority vote. Sir Clive Woodward, he talks in his rules around teamship. I think the first rule is around, you need 100% majority vote. Well, you can't have 95% of people agree to it and one person not, because that one person's going to be set up to fail. And I think in that sense, you've really got to get people to buy into the teamness of it in order to ensure that there's not too much disparity or two different versions of the same thing within the same team. We like to call it a soft contract. So when you were talking there about engaging your teams and what works for you, what are the things that, okay, here's the policy, okay, that's what the business has given us. What does that mean to all of us? And what are the things that we're all going to agree to that make us a great team, that make us have this identity collectively, that allow us to support one another? I think that's something that's very big at the moment, but it's probably not the starting point of the conversation, which is how can we ensure that this new way of working will allow us to support one another, you to support your colleagues, us to support you. It's all straight into, if we talk about plan, do, review, a lot of the conversations will go straight into, okay, well, which version do you want to be? Do you want to be flexible? Do you want to work from home? Do you want to work full time from the office? It's so tactical.
It's all how many days will we be in or out of a physical space. And I think there's a few important things there. We need to check our language. So for me, that's very much around return to the office. We've heard a lot of return to work, where fair enough, if you've been furloughed, that's a very different conversation. But people have worked very effectively and very efficiently and very hard in remote locations. I think we need to be able to split out and distinguish the difference between working at home during a pandemic and then working remotely or from anywhere. Now, I personally prefer the term work from anywhere, because for me, anywhere includes an office. That might not be just the one office. It could be that we've got a variety of. It could be that we meet in the Starbucks. It could be that we meet on a customer's site, or we've met today to do this. I don't think there's this kind of either or. You're either at home or you're in a fixed space. And I think, as leaders, we need to be able to demonstrate, yes, we come together and we have those team dynamics and those collaboration and that bond that's built face to face that we preach about, obviously. But also to demonstrate that if you've got a day where it makes more sense for you to be at home or somewhere that works for you, whether that's, we've talked today about digital nomads and traveling and working from anywhere in its truest sense, then that's okay as well, because you're in quite a siloed way of working and you're just going to sit on calls all day, perhaps. So I think as well as that kind of soft contract, it is this, how do we have these working styles and practices, and when do they change and flex based on what the team's doing? I do think at the moment to try to go to the exact individuals is hard because everybody has their own preference, but wherever we can try to accommodate that, either through technology that enables the same experience, it allows me to personalize it, it recognizes that I'm a human being, I'm not just an algorithm or a pixel. I think it's hugely important, and it's the same when we start to bring that then into a team dynamic, and what are we as a team, and how are our leaders part of that.
It's that human element is always something that people are seeking out. I had a moment the other day, so I like working from the office kind of person. I can't help it. Sometimes I'll get up, I'll get changed to go to the office. I know nowadays hardly anybody's going to be in. Probably a Friday tends to be the day where hardly anybody's in. And I'll go sit in the office and I'll work away even if there's no one else there. And last week, actually, I had a sort of a 10, 12 day period where it was just really, really intense. I got up, did my normal routine, and all of a sudden I went, what am I doing? like just be at home.
Yeah.
Just take away even that very short journey down the road to where our offices are. And it felt really good. Now, some people could listen to this and go, well, you own the business, you can do what you want. That's just not how I set it up for myself in my mind. But there is that element of, if you've ever worked for anybody, there's the perception that the owner of the business or the CEO or the MD of the business gets to make that choice freely. And why is that? I'll give you another example, slightly different, but James Timpson inherited the Timpson chain from his dad, and he was doing a podcast, the High Performance podcast he was on, and he was talking about when he went into the stores, he went and turned around a number of different stores multiple times over because he had this freedom to make whatever decision he wanted. And guess what? When he called the distributors and asked for whatever he wanted, he got it because he was the owner's son at the time. And it was then at that point he stumbled upon this, well, hold on, I'm the one that's going into these stores and I'm fundamentally changing their performance because I have this freedom as the owner's son and almost this, dare I say, power to make these decisions because of that title. Why can't everybody have that?
Yeah.
And I guess that's maybe some of the dialogue is, okay, well, if you were to be running this business or running this department, if you had the freedom to make whatever choices that you make, but don't forget, with that comes the responsibility of running that business and running this department, running your team, same as it will be for any colleague, their job, their outputs, their performance for the customers, their performance to make sure they're, doing their part within their team.
Yeah.
But right now, wipe all that away. What could it look like for you?
Yep.
But also, you've got the responsibility of your team, me as your leader and manager, your customers, all of those things to consider. Yeah. But you can still do that within the freedom of choice. Could that be a slightly different conversation?
Yeah, and I think we've got to have trust in the people that are in our teams, right? They're there to do what's best for the business and the team. And as long as what is that output and what's that expectation is communicated, you would hope that those people would be best situated to know where is best for them to get that done. And I think there's so much that we can start to pull into the conversation there around, that work has changed. So how we interact with our customers has changed such that we may need to be flexible at different times that we weren't necessarily previously. I think automation inside of work has changed. You will need to take the example of, let's say, Blockbuster or, drone pilots. You no longer need a camera in a helicopter because we've got the concept of drones. So not only has the pilot's role perhaps been made redundant, so has the camera operator. But previously, we didn't have the drone operator as a role that was necessarily needed, or the editor. So technology will evolve and change. And I sometimes think when we put our head in the sand and we don't communicate as a team and we don't share actually what are some of our reservations, what are some of our challenges that we might have, where does that feel a little uncomfortable, we don't speak this truth and be authentic as leaders and team members to go, actually, how do we get this right as a team and how do we figure that out as a collective? I think because work has evolved and changed, so has the workplace. So I have people in my team that love going to the office and that's what's right for them. I have people in the team that love being at home or love working in a WeWork or a Starbucks or a customer site. I think the flexibility then of when and how also comes into that conversation because, we saw a big impact on working mums during COVID and the impact of childcare and how that was a challenge of having children at home. And I think we need to think more about the flexibility of when as well as where. That is more inclusive for people. It does allow more diverse or minority groups to be back in the workplace. But that said, there's always times where you've talked about where there's that soft contract of the team of this is when we come together. This is when we have these meetings and this is when we need you either online or in the office. And for me, that's a conversation. We don't necessarily need to dictate that. It's about a conversation and everybody being part of why that's important for us to be online at that same time.
Well, also people have a different sort of productivity at different times of the day. Best time of day, I was on another podcast talking about the same thing. Mine is early in the morning.
Yeah.
Whereas I know Kate, she can work into the night, real night owl. So when Kate had her son, it was never, when she integrated back into work, the environment that PTI had created it allowed for that.
Yeah.
Do those bits, but the business knew that the time not would be made up, but we just knew that it had to work around, those needs, and that at that time, not necessarily a need, but a reality. But it is no different for someone that maybe doesn't have children. They will have better times of the day, and that's again, you talk about changing the language. It shouldn't be about because someone's taking their children to school. What is the best time of day for you to work? Where are you at your optimum? Because that's when you have the conversation. So if it's me and someone says, well, I'm a night owl, I've got to work out a way that I communicate with that individual, because come 5 o'clock, and I nosedive in terms of energy and my ability to think productively, because I've done all mine in the morning. They're the trade-offs that you've got to have a conversation with, but they're not. The intention is not about, well, you either fit around me. It's just a trade-off of, okay, well, how do we connect in the middle? Again, going back to the intro that we set up, what is the connection? Therefore, without it sounding like a deliberate shoe in here, and what is that connection between technology and leaders that once you've had these great conversations enables you to match up somewhere in the middle?
And that then comes into the tools that we use, doesn't it? So this is where it goes full circle. It's about a conversation. It's recognizing that there isn't necessarily one size fits all. It's that constant communication and connection around what are the outputs and what are the goals that we're trying to achieve, and then how do we do it? And that's where I'd like to pull that back to your, the plan part and the do and the review. So when you're then in the moment, there might be new technology that comes in that actually goes, this is a great way when teams are not online all at the same time. So we look at, as an example, distributed workforce now, that you could technically, if you can do that role from anywhere, you could have a multitude of people around the globe. Now, time zones are going to be a challenge there, as they've always been, right? It's not pandemic-led. But how do we then enable people to catch up on content that they maybe have missed? So if that's a team stand-up, have we made that available to people to access so that you then don't feel included as part of something, and it's this real inclusive team regardless of the time zone that you're in? And how can you then contribute to the conversations that happened after the event, and how do you continue that communication? Because you and I wouldn't just have one conversation on the NFL and then never speak about it again, right?
No.
We continue to talk about it because that's how human beings connect. So if we enable that through the tools that we use, but recognize that we'll have these different patterns, but then we might need those times where you and I are on at the same time, and we contract that together, or we contract that as a team.
That's it, and that is what I really like about it, is that you can set that in. You'll find patterns, you'll find consistencies, you'll get there. I don't know, I might be jumping ahead here slightly, but in terms of that review part, a strategy changes. Why? Because everything changes. Change is constant. So our business strategies, our people strategies, our L&D strategies, whatever it may well be, needs to have the agility to change. And everybody's kind of setting off on this venture right now. And there has to be the touch points, the measures. But I don't just mean numerical measures, i.e. what's output, what's login times, who's working in what hours. Not that data. I'm talking about behaviourally, is this working for us all? So in the early stages of making these decisions, or for instance, the one thing we did do well when implementing the Hula system is we caught it really early. Because straight away it was, the reviews were at the start, because they needed to be regular and quite more detailed They weren't touch points. It was a deep dive into, what are we thinking? What are we feeling?
Yeah.
What's everyone getting from this experience? So we caught it really early, and that's when we re-engaged with you and we said, okay, let's just go forward to basics here and let's do a bit more of the planning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what needs to happen here, and as people step into this new world or these new ways, as you called it, working.
Yeah.
Right. Is just go right week by week, probably from now until, let's not overkill it, end of October. Let's just keep a regular check-in.
Yeah.
Tweaks, adjustments, anything needs to change. Once we're confident that's working and we're in that doing and it's working, maybe spread it out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's wait till post-Christmas. Let's see what that feels like in the new year. New strategy, new demands from our customers, changing marketplaces. Is it still working? Setting out right now to define whatever this new working way is for you as a leader, you as a team, you as an organisation, it should just be the start of the journey.
Yeah.
It's not this is it for 2 years.
I don't think anybody can define where we'll be in 2 years, because if I go back 2 years, would I think that we would be where we are right now? Absolutely not. And I think this is the thing, is this isn't future of. So when we talk about future of work, you and I have said this a couple of times already, it's now. It's been happening for some time. I don't think we're in a position that we can any longer kind of just wait for things to go back to quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
We've had to embrace this change, and we've done it very effectively. In parts, not as effectively, granted. But again, we've been in a lockdown and people have been going through a lot as seen throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. But I think that constant, adapt and change and compound those changes up and go, actually, this is working for us, brilliant, let's do more of that. Do you know what? That's not worked. Let's pull back on that, or that might work for that team. Or could we, try something new that we've not done before? Which is for me where, from a Hula point of view, that is going, it's completely vendor agnostic. Why wouldn't I have the best of that, and bring that into one space? Because that allows for that flexibility of choice. I think when we then think about experiences, that's for me where I use an analogy of a couple of things really. Tech isn't just the answer, as we've talked about. Like, I can't get an Apple Watch and I've suddenly lost weight. Yes, it'll allow me to track data, and yes, it'll allow me to go out for a run and capture Strava and so on. But it's an enabler of those things, and it's a reminder, and it's a review point. It's the same with technology. We can't go, here's tech, are you engaged, and not have that plan, that communication, that review. I think we need to start to look at that with the experiences that we offer when we talk about physical space together. And my example here would be Peloton or AppleFit or Joe Wicks. Why would you get in the car, drive to the gym, to go to a spinning class, to sit on somebody else's bike that, let's be honest, may or may not be as clean as you would want it to be, then go into the public bathrooms, get changed, have to drive home in some traffic? If you had a bike or a piece of kit or something that you could do at home, you wouldn't, unless it was about the experience, unless it was about getting in the zone and the lights, and you were seeing a friend and you were going for lunch after, or whatever that might be. You would choose an easier option and a quicker option and a digital option. Yeah. And that's the same, I think, when we look at shopping experiences. I can get it that afternoon from Amazon Prime. Why would I go to a shopping centre? Because I might not know what I want. I might want to meet you for a coffee. We might want to go and catch a film afterwards. We want to be in town. We want to have, see different things, meet different people. Why wouldn't we do that with physical space of this, whether it's digital or whether you're together? So if I am on Teams calls all day, or I am doing admin work, or I'm communicating with people around the globe, absolutely be at home and be in a more digital space. If that's so that I need to collaborate with people, or I've not met somebody, or it's somebody's induction, or it's the first time the team are ideating out an idea or a training solution, bring everybody together. If that's a difficult conversation and that's hard to do with somebody via tech, if they reserve and pull back a little, maybe use that as a face-to-face, but think about the experience. And that's where I think that as leaders, we've got to see why are you coming back in? Rather than you need to be in 3 days or you need to be in 5 days. What's the rationale and the why? And I wondered, are you seeing that from people that you're working with now, that they've got that in their flow of, this is when the team works there, and this is why, as a team we communicate of, we'll be here together, and this is the reason, and the experiences we'll create.
I think I'm seeing lots of different versions of the truth. I think what I love about that example that you've given there is the experience part is the key. That's the language part. I am seeing lots of different examples. I'm also seeing, like many other things that are going on in the workplace and in the world right now, fear.
Yeah.
Not knowing what to do is right.
Yeah.
Do I have the conversation? What if I say something in that conversation that makes me liable to that individual never having to come into the office again because I can't ask them? There's so much in the media, it's all consuming. And I think this series, the Power series, maybe that's the balance here. For today, thinking about already, I can't believe we're closing in on 40 minutes, which we said we'd finish at. But if we talk about it's not all about the technology, it's about the experience.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the balance. I said in the intro, we've got to find always an opportunity to find a balance and that tipping point between leaders and managers and the technology. Well, actually, remove both for now and talk to your colleagues, talk to your peers, work with them too, help them. If you're listening to this and they haven't, ask them to start engaging with people, with using the language at the forefront of it, of what experiences do I want to create?
Yeah.
That's a different conversation.
And it's human focused.
There you go.
Because that's what sets it apart, isn't it? This is about the people that we do this for. It's the experiences, the emotion, the complexity that we all have and we carry around with us.
Yeah.
And that's what will make this successful if we focus back on the human beings that have gone through this entire time.
Yeah.
They're going through so much change.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, there is that fear. There is that, well, what if I've said the wrong thing? Or what if I've set a precedent that we then don't do this or we then do that and other people are doing this? And I think to close this up, it's okay at the minute to not know. And it's okay to share and pivot as you go.
Absolutely. And think about an experience. So the shopping experience that you talked about, or the gym. All of those require other people. So therefore, going back to the team, going back to the experience, you're going to create something that has complete buy-in from everybody, but something that everybody's going to enjoy. That will require everybody. So yes, you're going to have your business policies, and yes, you're going to have your governance and the guidance and the rules, but what's your experience of that? And if, go and define your experience of whatever that policy may state, you're onto a winner straight away for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Well, that was the first one. I loved it. It flew by, which is normally an indicative sign of we could get carried away.
Lots more to get into.
Indeed. So thank you, everybody, for listening to our first episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We encouraged you on the intro, and we will again. Anything you want to talk about, anything you want us to talk about, get involved. Give us the feedback. Opportunities, challenges, whatever they are, whatever you're feeling right now. What are your experiences? And share them with us, and hopefully we can, through the Power series, work with you and support one another again through forever changing times.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for taking the time as well. It's been interesting, and I think it will continue to be a challenging few months for people, and there'll be lots of wins out the back of that, and let's just learn from it together.
Can't wait. Right, we'll see you all and speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.